Hey everyone, I'm out here in the garage today with the Acura RL once again. And I recently did a video on replacing the alternator belt on this car, and I thought I'd just go ahead and follow that up with replacing the AC belt. So stay tuned. Alright, so we're going to be replacing or looking at the AC belt today. Now, I don't need to replace the AC belt on this car, nor the power steering belt. The alternator belt was the only belt that was bad. And I remember distinctly now that I did not replace the alternator belt when I replaced the engine. I only replaced the AC belt and the power steering belt. So we're going to pull the AC belt off, just so you can get an idea of how that works, how that comes off. And I'll show you how I do it, and then we'll just put it back on. So let's get into it. Alright, so let's go ahead and remove the AC compressor belt, which is right here. And this is our alternator, so we need to get the alternator belt off first. We've already got that off. So check out the video that I did on replacing the alternator belt on the Acura RL. So we're going to get this belt off. Now as you can see, this belt goes around the crank pulley. There's also an idler pulley right here. And then there's our AC compressors way down here. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and loosen up this nut right here on the AC idler pulley. That's a 14 millimeter. Okay, so that's loose enough. You don't need to take it off. And then there's an adjuster right there that requires a 10 millimeter. So to loosen the belt, you want to turn the adjuster counterclockwise. I'll go ahead and put my ratchet on there for a 10 millimeter socket. I've got a long extension on it. Okay, so that's loose enough that I can spin it by hand now too. I usually just go ahead and loosen this all the way up. That's probably going to be about good right there, I would say. Probably go a little further. I think that's going to be good enough. Now what I usually do is go ahead and take the belt off the idler pulley first. So just go ahead and peel it off here, like that. And then the crank pulley is not going to move, so you're going to have to spin the belt off the AC pulley. The AC pulley will move. So how I do that, I just usually pull it from the top and pull it all the way down and just gradually just kind of wrap it off. Here we go. So I've got it off the AC compressor. Now I'll just take it off the crank pulley. And there's our belt. Alright, so the OEM belt is a Mitsubishi. Part number 38920-P5A-004. And you can see also on here it's 5PK953. Now if you do a search by this part number 5PK953, I could not find this belt. And actually the new part number is 5PK950. So if you look for a Gates belt or a Bando or a Continental, most likely that 5PK950 is a part number you're going to need. Alright, so let's put this belt back on. I'm just going to tighten it reasonably tight, and then we'll talk about tensioning it once we get it back all the way on. So I'm going to put it on the crank pulley first. That's the second slot on the crank pulley, not the first one. That's where the alternator belt goes on the first one. And then wrap it around below on the AC pulley. So you got to come underneath the AC pulley and pull the belt over the top of the pulley. Alright. And then it should just fall right onto the idler pulley right there. So pretty simple. Alright, so now we've got the belt back on the pulleys. What I'm going to do is tighten it up. I'm just going to get it reasonably tight. Do it by hand first. Okay, that's getting pretty close there. All right, I'm going to stop right there. All right, so one thing you can do with tensioning this belt, if you don't want to take the splash shield off underneath to do that, you can kind of, I guess at it. I don't really like doing that, but the proper way to do this would be to press on the belt down here between the crank pulley and the AC pulley. So you would be pressing up, and then just like what we did with the alternator belt, that would tell you how much deflection you have, and you can measure that using a ruler like I did in the alternator belt video, and then adjust it from there. So in order to get to that belt from underneath, of course you got to jack the car up or get it on ramps, and then you got to take the splash shield off too. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do that next. Alright, so we can go ahead and tighten up the belt now, and the good thing is I don't actually have to take the splash shield off underneath. I still need to get underneath the car in order to tighten the belt up correctly by using the ruler method we use in the alternator belt video. So the tension specification is when you put about 22 foot-pounds of force on the belt from underneath, the specification or the deflection is 0.22 to 0.24 inches, or roughly about 1/4 of an inch. And that's for a new belt. And then for a used belt is 0.31 to 0.43 inches, or roughly around 5/16 to 7/16 of an inch. So let's go ahead and get that done. Alright, so I've got some tape on the ruler this time, so hopefully you can see that while I'm underneath there trying to push on the belt to see if we've got the proper deflection. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. Alright, so I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it looks like it needs to go a little bit tighter. Alright, so I'll tighten it up a little bit more. Alright, so I think that's going to be good enough. We're going to check it one more time, and then I think we can call it good. Alright, so to wrap up this part of the job, we're going to go ahead and tighten down this nut on the idler pulley. The torque spec is 33 foot-pounds, and once again, that is a 14 millimeter. Alright, so the last thing to do here would be to put the alternator belt back on, so check out that video for that procedure. And put everything else back in if you took anything else out. And that's it. Alright, so there's a procedure for replacing the air conditioning belt on the RL. And I'm probably going to do the power steering belt procedure also on this car. I'm not sure I'm going to go any deeper than that, though I had contemplated doing the procedure for the timing belt. I don't need to do the timing belt on this car. It was done about 40,000 miles ago, so it's fine. And anytime you get in really deep and you start looking at timing belts and some other things in there, there's always a chance that something's going to go wrong. I'm fairly confident I won't have any issues doing the timing belt procedure on this car as a demonstration. I've done the Acura Legend timing belt, I don't know how many times, probably at least a dozen times or half dozen times. So I don't think I'll have any problems. I just don't want to disrupt anything. So we'll see on that one. But hopefully this information was helpful, and thanks for watching.